Gap analysis. We have worked in the DecomTools program, and I heard my friends Stefan tell something about DecomTools. DecomTools is about, I think, 56 subjects, and it's in 7 work groups divided. So when you hear me, this is one of the 56. It's just a small tile of what is really a great project. And I hope to tell you something about what we have done in that part that I've been on, and it's gap analysis. Mr. Roelof, I heard you talking, and I thought, oh, he's telling my story. You talked about legislation, you talked about rules, you talked about how are we going to do it, and what are we going to do with it. So that's something that I'm going to talk about it too. I made 17 slates. So normally it takes 2 hours to talk about this. I will try to do it much faster, and I hope you're able to read with me, because it's a lot of reading and less writing, because you get the slides later on. I will try to do this in a short way, and I will try to addition when it's needed to tell you what we have researched in this work package. First of all, you talked about the laws. Laws are very important. Luckily, I must say, we have had some experience with gas and oil. Gas and oil in the North Sea has a long tradition, and in that long tradition we have made a lot of mistakes. Pollution was something that happened every time. Redundancy is a thing that we also met. You know that some of those installations were just dumped. They thought when it's done, it's done, and we gave it a kick, and then it's all right. It's a bit of a problem in the North Sea because it's a very shallow sea, and everything you do is going to come back to you. So I think it's very important that you have good laws. We investigated what kind of laws were there. And then to our surprise, and I hope it was very positive, there are a lot of laws, international, even intentional mentioned for Europe, that already cover a lot of the problems that we think that we want to have when we have to decommission. We have UNCLOS, we have OSPA, we have MARPOL, and we have the IMO directives. And when you read them, you see that when you have to decommission offshore, very important, onshore is a little bit of cowboys, but offshore, it's very much regulated. Why? We have the shear planes, we have all the kind of problems that we have on the sea. But these 4 important rules and legislations, initiatives, make it possible to let everything that we do on the North Sea be removed, cleaned up, and refurbished for next editions, for repowering. Okay, that's what I want to say. So there is a lot of knowledge already there. When you look at those laws, and that's what we've done in this work package, you say, what's the situation at the moment? And you see that we have a lot of things that we have to do. We have to remove structures, we have to dispose of waste material, and we have to do something to let what is been revived during the time that the windmills were there. You see a lot of new nature. You have to protect that, because it's not only removal, it is also protection. So you have to take in care that you don't remove the good things and leave the bad things where they are. So we have to take a special notion to what's going to happen there. What for conclusion did we take? Just what I said, all the rules and applications are fully applicable. There's no problem. What we have to do, we can do. The rules are there, laws are there. When a policeman, the sea policeman will come and say we have to do this and that, they can take the rules, no problem. Looking at the laws that are there, we have all signed it. All nations around the North Sea have done that. So it's applicable. You know, we are there, they are there, everybody knows it's going to be like it is. And that may be the most important thing that we have, there is no conflict on domestic requirements. It will be very important to know that, because that means that we can do what we do when we have to do it, decommissioning. This picture that I want to see that maybe shows you why we are so fond of what is happening in the North Sea. You see the waves are there, the wind is there, the mills are there, and the transportation is there, because we are just an industry developing and growing. And you see at the moment that a lot of economic positive things come from these windmills. Not only that we can win electricity, we can win hydrogen, but also the shipping is making a new start in this development. You see there a very nice little ship. It's a little bigger when you come close to it, but it's the ship that is specially designed for this kind of technology. So you see, everything we do has a positive notion. Then you would say, but in the North Sea, we are boss of our own country. I come from the Netherlands, and we have a very big part of the North Sea. We are a small country, but a long coast. And that long coast is redirected to all those yards we have in the North Sea as ownership. They call it EEC, Economic Zone. But we are not alone. And that's very important to know. We are not alone. And everybody at the moment, you hear it when you see the politics, everybody thinks we are alone. We are living in a world where we are just alone. But we are not in the North Sea. All these partners are there, and they are there with us. They are there in an agreement. They are there because they have said that we want to exploit the North Sea together. It's very important to know that, because it would prevent war and it would prevent a lot of quarrels. I know that we have some quarrels with the Germans because there is a little border in the North Sea where we still dispute each other, and that becomes, I hope that we will find a solution for that, but I think that will happen. Based on these things, we have also made some investigations, and what do you want in that situation? You see there all those points. All the things that we already talked about come back in these points. It's very important to know that we have made some research on that, and the research is very important to use in the next generation that we have to develop on the wind energy problem. I say wind energy problem, but I should say wind energy possibilities. Looking at the national regulations, and then you see how much work we have done. Tendering, and we talk about when you are building a wind park, tendering is very regional. Denmark has its own rules, Germany has its own rules, and everybody does what he thinks is best for his country, although he knows that's in the North Sea. The contractors that we use, on the contrary, are not so national. They are very international. And that makes it a little bit funny, because now you see, on the one hand, you have one who says, I want someone to do it, and on the other side, you have the one who says, I will do it for you, but I'm international, so I have my own rules and all my own settings. I think I know what I'm doing. We'll come back to that later on, because that will be very important. The way we are going to contract people for development of the windmill parks, will be very important in the setting that we use for the decommissioning. Because also the decommissioning have to be implanted in the way that you now are planning those new windmills. You have to take about and have attention to that. So the last thing, adoption of legislation, that's what we conclude at the moment. Although every country does its own thing, when you come to the bare facts, and the bare facts are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, what have we done? We do the same. There's not so much diversity. The only thing that differs is that the one country asks you to do a deposit, the other country says, I need a guarantee, and the third one says, I want you to build those windmills in a straight way, and the other says, I have a nice plan where I can follow the wind, so every windmill has to be placed on a certain place that's according to what the wind does. But when you come to the conclusions, you see that we do the same thing everywhere, all over. So the fact that we talk about independent nations is not such a problem. The independent nations, they are still there, but their rules are not. And that's why I'm a little bit advocate of Europe. That's why we are European. We have some legislation and rules that are the same for everybody. Sometimes it's a profit, sometimes disadvantage, but we do it together. Very important to know. And there is no problem of doing it. You don't have to change so much. Sometimes you see the people who are making those windmills busy hammering them in, hammering the piles, and do everything they can. but you have to be able to remove them. And now you use the same material, the same equipment to get the piles out. This is a possibility. When it gets bigger, and we see on the seaside that it's getting bigger at the moment, it will be more a problem. But then we have a solution for that also, that we can cut it off below the seabed. So everything has its good and its bad. Looking to the governmental dismantling, you know there is some government demand. You have to have some rules and regulations where you can do something. You see the different scenarios that are there, the end-of-life scenarios, the constructions. We looked at that, and we got an idea of the situation as it is now. You see that, and that's one of the conclusions that's maybe the most important one. Every windmill was not built because we had to have wind, but because we thought it was economically a sound reason to do this. We could earn money with it. And we needed it because we didn't have all the possibilities to get the oil and gas out of the soil or out of the neighboring countries. See what's happening to Russia at the moment. So we did something, and it's just economically driven. We said, and that came later, we have to do the material, but it's like a problem to think about reusing material when you are building. When you build a brick house, you need the stones, and the stones can be very hard and very soft. You can have stones in a different color and different form. But nobody thinks about it. He has to break up that house again. He thinks, that house is forever. And sometimes it is forever, but not always. In the beginning, nobody thought about this. We are now finding out that those decommission work that we have to do is not based on a plan. No, it's based on casualties. It's based on eventualities. It's based on what happened. And they say, oh, no, now we have to remove it. The way that we are doing it at the moment, and the talks about the landfill, is not so strange. We don't know exactly at the moment what kind of material we used. We don't know what they put in that windmill wing. Sometimes they want to make a strong one, and the strong one could only be made by putting in some secret additive, some resin that you never know, and some other stuff, some poisonous stuff, but sometimes it makes it stronger. And we don't know where it is at the moment. I can say that because we have some experience with that. We don't know what's in the windmills at the moment. And you talk about the amount of toxic material that's in there, then we don't even have an estimation of what is really inside. So when you have to decommission or you want to destroy and reuse the materials, it can be very hazardous to work with that material. So we don't know at that moment, and it's just a conclusion that we took. I told you already that we have the ecological way issues were never prominent. You know, when you start, you hit your pile. You don't think of the mammals. You don't think about the soils. You think, how can I get as many piles as possible in a short time and in the best of weather? So it's all kind of rethinking that we didn't do in the beginning. We have to do that now. You see, when you follow all these situations, issues, you think, what kind of conclusion can we take? No. And that's what I think Mr. Rudolph already said. You should bring those rules and regulations in line with all those international laws, and also think about your neighbors, because you have to do the same thing, but your neighbors do. Be very sure and be very strict that you uphold those rules. That's something that's not always happening. I know my colleagues. I'm from. I didn't tell you, but I'm a technical engineer, so I think in technical solutions. And technical solutions are not always the best solutions. They are the swift solutions, and they are the cost-saving solutions. And what do you see? When you are able to give a good law and a good regulation control, everybody will sustain the rules and regulations and will try to keep them up. When you don't do that, everybody will think about, how can I do it? And then you get all those cowboy-like ideas. And what we also saw in this, the last one, space is a dire commodity. The time that we could choose every place in the North Sea for a wind park is gone. We have to organize. It's like on land. You have to have a permit, you have to have the place, you have to have the situation, and you have to have what I would say the good construction to make it in a way that you are already thinking about what when I leave it, what when I destruct it, what am I going to do then? Very important to know that. And these are things that we should develop, and I think that the universities should be making ideas about it. And I must say, technically everything is possible, but we cannot be structural in those ideas, and we should be structural. You see, sometimes it is heavy part, and sometimes it's not so heavy. This is a very heavy part, is a machine. This is what is inside the turbine. I always show this picture because, and that's something you should know, for a windmill engineer, the piles are not important, the wings are not important. The only thing that's very important is this thing. The motor inside of the nacelle. But that's what he makes, and that's what he likes. That's what he's made for, and that's what he's designed. Looking at the sustainability and licensing, now you see what they're standing there. I'm going very quickly now. You don't think that I try to hide this. But you see, that is a very important issue, and it's end-of-life responsibility. What happens when you're end of life? Who is responsible? How are you going to choose those measures that are environmental sound? I can tell you, even in a windmill, we have liquids that are very poisonous, and we should not let them go into the North Sea. But when I close my eyes and I do this, nobody knows what's happening. And the North Sea is a big sea. And of course, we have to think about, the use of materials, because materials are getting even more important to be reused. Not because we think that we have to do it environmentally. No, it's because the amount of material is going to lack. We have not got an endless stream of material anymore. So we have to be sound with that. That's why those waste companies are earning a lot of money, because waste is money. And waste is also resource. And I hope that we take that as a resource. And the last thing, the recycling materials, we already talked about it. I speed up my talk. Okay. What have we also seen in the licensing world, because you have to have a license to build your windmill, that there is always a problem from park owner versus landowner. We forget it, but the land is owned by the country, but the windmills are owned by the companies who make the electricity. So it's very important to know that, because we have some discussion together what happens when you try to decommission a windmill. You do something on other man's soil, and the other man can give you some limitations, can make it very hard for the company who decommissions. So that's very important to know. And that's why I said it's always the authorities that give the approval for the decommissioning. But you can imagine what happens at the moment. We have a lot of windmills in the sea, and they are not so strong. They have 2 megawatts, 3 megawatts, 4 megawatts. But we are capable at the moment to make 10 megawatts or 15 megawatts windmills. So what would we like? When I was a company, I would say, let's go to 10 and 15. But is that something that is positive for the North Sea? I don't know. Should the company decide that? I don't think so. I think that should be in the hand of the authorities.
We need to conclude now.
You want me to go faster?
20 minutes gone. So
there's a little story, I have to tell it. We have some reporter in Holland, and he does the same thing that you do. And he had someone with him, and he had a basket with him. And the man had a beautiful basket. He said, I have a beautiful basket. The man said, too long. He said, oh, I have a basket. He said, no, I have a basket, a little basket. He said, no, nog taller. And at the end of the story, it goes on. And then he said, basket. And that was the end, but you now do to me.
Charlotte has the basket.
Sorry. But I will try to make it as soon as I can.
But we need to stop because we're behind. It's 5 minutes past your time. So we need to conclude the end conclusion now.
Okay,
sorry.
I will go on to the conclusion. Sorry. I already warned her. I said when I'm beginning, I take 2 hours. But yeah, the gap analysis is what we have here. You're gonna get it on paper, so that's not a problem. We see that we have an evolution of wind parks. We see that there is an environment that is very threatened, and we have to do something about it. We see that we have scenarios, and we don't have the scenarios. One scenario, we have many scenarios. We have to do something about that. We have to do something about the carbon footprint. It's very important to know that we are also, that's very important to know, also polluting the area through windmills. And people say windmills are the cleanest that you get. No, they are also polluting. In a small way, but they are there. And we need guidelines. And the last thing I would say is there should be a one rule approach. And my prerogative would be, my goal would be, that there will be a one-stop shop for the whole North Sea. Forget your continental plat, forget your EEZ, your zone, your European economic zone. Make one decision, a one-stop shop, and let it be done by a European institution. Give those responsibilities to them. They can plan, they can make it for everybody the same. That's something that we have to recognize. Then you come to the last thing I want to say. Yeah, keep up. To be acknowledging that we want to do it together, and you want to have a one-stop shop, you have to have a one-stop schooling shop. And that means that you have to reassemble, reunite the rulings and all the schooling activities that you do. Try to make that one reasonable schooling method, one reasonable schooling trajectory. Let it be one thing. And you can only acknowledge those different things that you get by schooling in Denmark or in Holland or everywhere else by giving European certificates. Say what you want to have and let everybody comply with it. And then you come to the ports, we have our discussion later. Let ports be certificated for this kind of work. Let them be selected and don't wait for the economic necessity or the cowboy-like economics to be fighting each other to find one harbor who will be on top. But make it sure that the ones you pick should be picked by the regional and European governments. Thank you.
Thank you, Al.